Hi everyone, welcome back to the Watch Insider. My name is Brian and thank you for logging on. I'm joined tonight by Tim Masso.
Welcome folks, welcome back. It's only been a few hours, right?
Yeah, and I thank you guys, by the way, for hanging out in the chat. I actually was just talking to the guys here and we really like the idea of, getting everybody to log on, get questions ready, and maybe starting the video, a couple minutes after the fact. So, we'll see what happens there. But hi to everybody watching. In particular, hi to Ross out there. Ross is currently watching from home, but he recently picked up 2 FP Journes, and I just spoke to him before this show, and he mentioned he'd be watching. So
that's right. Buy watches from us, become an internet celebrity overnight. By the way, speaking of our next internet star, I want to announce, guys, are we ready to make our announcement for November? All right, guys, we are drawing the Tudor Black Rose. Brian and I have an announcement from us to you. This is a holiday surprise come early. Congratulations to Mark Rubin of Texas. Mark, you are the proud owner of the short production Black Rose, the most collectible modern Tudor and the only really collectible Tudor dive watch that can still go diving, because it's not an old watch, it's just a rare one. We are going to send that to you. Thank you so much. You have an Hublot Big Bang, we know, and at one point you bought a Bell & Ross from us, so thank you for being a past customer and a fan of the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, and everybody else that that signed up for the drawing. We're going to be doing another one we are doing another one in December, right? Yes, we're going to be doing another one in December. So stay tuned to see what the watch is. But again, guys, we really appreciate all of you that that sign up, and we will. And the more of you guys that sign up, we'll continue giving watches away. So
we're going to have a new link for this in a few hours. It's going to be up. The new contest is going to run over the course of my next couple of shows through the end of December. So the final show at the end of December will be the conclusion of the contest. That's each Monday. That's going to be the Watches Tonight show. So Watches Tonight will be the start and the finish of the next drawing, which will be for a Rolex Submariner.
Awesome. Oh, wow, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Big leagues.
The big one, guys. The holiday blowout.
So that's awesome. So, okay, cool. So we've got, again, fun show tonight. A bunch of cool watches here on the table. I try to make it especially eclectic this evening. We've got everything from Resence to Tag Heuer, Patek, Omega, one of the coolest Vacherons that I think you'll ever see, ever, and an awesome, crazy blinged out Rolex.
Okay, let's start with the Vacheron. Okay, this is a wonderful Vacheron Constantin Mono-Pusher Army Corps of Engineers chronograph. Now, this is a timepiece that's representative of a style that was produced for the Army Corps of Engineers in the early 20th century, and it's an interesting enamel dial survivor, a timepiece that features a silver case uniquely, as well as original Corps of Engineers numbering. Now, this is a timepiece that remarkably survived the big melts of the late 2000s, when, I'm sorry to say, a lot of pocket watches in silver and gold were melted down for their commodity metal value. So not only a survivor, but a remarkably influential one. Type in Corps of Engineers watch or RGM Corps of Engineers watch just to see how this particular dial style has lived on. And a wonderfully useful, or at least pyrotechnic complication, when you're dealing with a chronograph with a hand that long, every reset is a ski jump. I mean, this is a watch with immense theater, and it begins and ends with that enamel dial, cathedral hands, and oversized Arabics. That is a sensational piece. And again, it's a piece of history.
Yeah. Did you show the back?
Oh, yeah, I showed it. Corps of Engineers. This is a style representative of that used by the Army Corps of Engineers in the early 20th century. And the timepiece, a real survivor. The nice thing about enamel dials is as long as you don't crack them, they're kind of forever.
One of my other favorite parts about this watch, number one, obviously, is that it was made for, I thought it's very cool that it was made for the U.S. market, and that it was made in stainless steel.
This one is a stainless steel, not a silver watch.
I believe it's stainless steel.
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Even better. I kind of doubt it's stainless steel, because stay-bright stainless steel for watches wasn't really a thing until the 1920s.
Maybe it is silver. Maybe I'm completely wrong, because I am seeing the oxidation here, so I would say that, yes, I am wrong.
Here, let's do the sniff test. No, didn't pass the sniff test. Silver watch.
But no, it's very cool, and again, just a fun watch that comes in.
How about a watch that evokes vintage watches? A nice piece. We've had different versions of this one on the show before, but 1996 was a great year for Tag Heuer.
Yeah, so this is one that I wear pretty regularly. Mine's a reedition from the 60s. This one we had a back and forth going on before the show just on when exactly this one was made, but I'll let you tell the...
Yeah, this is the 1996 Heuer Carrera reedition. Back when they still thought 1964 was the first Carrera, this was called at the time the 1964 reedition. 36 millimeters in steel. It's a very spare watch, minimally marked, and this was really the beginning of the awareness that Heuer as a brand held a bit more currency than Tag Heuer. So what you have here is a 36 millimeter steel watch, evocative of the first Carrera reference, but powered by a Lamagna 1873. That's the Moonwatch caliber. This one with a wonderful original tritium dial. It's becoming a vintage watch in its own right. This is an entirely different kind of vintage. And 96 was the year of the Tag Heuer IPO, which was captained in large part by a pre-IWC Georges Kern. He's bringing his magic to Breitling these days, and this is where it all started. And a great piece.
What I like so much about these watches is that they really are extraordinarily close to the original pieces. Both in, design and execution.
That's a fact. The nice thing about this watch is that the only thing that really gives it away as a modern timepiece is the fact that it has a contemporary reference number on the back. So this watch, manual wind, very traditional, 3 Hz, 21/6 beat rate, and again, perfectly proportioned. All the strength of this watch isn't in the size, it's in the sharpness of those classical Carrera-style lugs. We call these lugs, regardless of what watch they're on today, Carrera lugs. That's how influential and distinctive they were. A way of blending lugs that wasn't the fluid arced form of a Calatrava or a Portugieser. This was Jack Heuer's masterpiece back in the day, and it remains just as relevant. Amazing to think this watch is now almost 23 years old.
Yeah, and what's so interesting too is that these types of watches, really 90s Tag Heuer and early 2000s, depending upon the reference, are actually gaining traction in the overall secondary marketplace. Collectors at large really like the overall size and look of this watch. They like that it has that sort of vintage-inspired feel, but a reasonable price point. And
there are a couple of
early
versions.
to mid 90s, even at this point though, is still quite old now. And you can pick them up at a reasonable price. And I just think that they're fun watches. They are a great way to get into a vintage watch at a good price.
Good size, and that's a sports watch. That's a sports watch that you can wear as a dress watch because it is so reasonably sized. You guys know my Zen EZM, so I'm not going to do a wrist chat. When it's the same watch every time, you may as well not. But let me show you what this 36 looks like. This is great because it's a sports watch through and through. No one's going to question the sporting credentials of any Carrera, but as a 36, it's a versatile look. If you're not enamored of modern Grand Carrera styling, this is a watch that's the antidote to the oversized Sportster. It's a timepiece that's elegant, enduring. Since 1963, the Carrera has stood the test of time. And the nice thing about 90s Tag Heuer is you get a lot of the style in some of the re-edition pieces, but you also get the security of a relatively modern watch. No one is counterfeiting these. Whereas with older, like true vintage 60s and 70s Heuer, you do have to worry about redials, Franken watches, all the vintage goblins come out of the woodwork there, but not in the 90s. So get on board. That's the next wave of vintage.
And one of my favorite things that we do too is that we're a Tag Heuer authorized dealer, so when a watch like this comes in, we'll order the original strap that came on the watch, and
or even the buckle if it's missing.
Or even the buckle if it's missing, and it's always fun to see the original strap that comes on the watch because it's such a rarity now. Like more often than not, you see this watch, it becomes available, and you see it on some. Not to say not a cool strap, but a cool strap that's aftermarket. So, people put them on suede or different things.
Someone's idea of a cool strap.
Exactly. And it's just always fun to see when these are on the factory strap because, you see the original iteration of the watch, and it's nice.
Okay. A totally different take on the watch. This is the watch that you can't stop watching. This is the Resence Type 1 Squared. Now, this is the Type 1 ruthenium silver. It's a variant of the Resence Type 1 that launched in 2017, and it was the first square Resence watch, but it was also the first Resence watch to feature what, frankly, should have been standard fitment from the first a caseback setting lever, so you can finally cycle that Resonance orbital convex system planetary display, and you see how everything moves in sync. It's like the solar system. Every body is spinning even as it orbits the sun. You'll also note, because all the displays are separate, it's a regulator, and it's beautifully loomed. This is also the slimmest Resonance you can buy at about 11.8 millimeters thick. It's got a little bit of wire lug radiometer in it.
Yeah, I mean, I love these watches, and I think that they did two things that really stood out to me that I thought was so great. And the first one is that, you know, we see a lot of watches doing what we do, and it's very rare that I think nowadays somebody executes a watch that is so vastly different than anything that's been done before or anything that anybody else is doing. And this is that. Like, nobody's doing anything like this. And it was and you could see that the person that created this brand and this line really was more of a coming from the design side and less being a watchmaker. And the second thing is that they're very upfront that they use an ETA base to this watch. Like, they're the first one to say, hey, like, you know, this is not a, you know, it's a altered ETA movement, but they're the first ones to say, hey, like, this isn't, you know, we're not here going to tell you that this is an in-house movement and all of these things. Like, they're very upfront about what the components of the watch are, and it's just a beautiful execution of a movement that's been available for a very long time.
Yeah, the nice thing about this watch, first of all, by the way, guys, right there you can see that it is 10 o'clock. It's a regulator dial, radially the minute scale. The hour indicator is the second largest. It has the Resonance hand at 12. And here's how the quickset system works. You turn it in one direction and you quick set the day. This is a day indicator, and right now the day is pointing to Sunday. So it's Sunday morning at 10 a.m.
Show the back, the lever.
Oh yeah, well, the lever is the best part, because in the past...
In the past they didn't have this, but now they have this lever that you can actually use to either wind the watch or set the time. And, you know, I get a lot of questions about Resonance and where it fits in the market, and a watch like this actually, you know, I would say... For, you know, if I was going to compare it to other brands that are similar, it actually does quite well, and they sell quite fast in the secondary market because they only make a couple hundred watches per year. Not many of them enter the secondary market. And it's the kind of watch that really doesn't have that much competition against any other brand. I mean, you know, when you think about a Voudin and a Laurent Ferrier, there's a lot of these independents that have similar looks and feels, but as an independent, nothing looks like a Resonance, and I just think that that's what sets it apart, and that's what makes it a great watch to have in any collection. I honestly really want one.
I like the fact that they all ride their bikes to work in the Belgian office. That's what I love everything about them. That is true. I met them and I talked to them about their bikes at SIHH. It's one of my best memories from the show, and I had a lot of good ones. The nice thing about this is a less complicated one. The Type 3 has an oil-filled dial that will increase both the thickness of the watch and downstream servicing costs. The Type 1 is essentially a flush sapphire, so you have that German silver dial, concentric circular brushed finish, and then you've got the sapphire immediately over it. The sapphire pretty much disappears, and again, this is the flattest Resonance you can buy. They range from fairly flat with the Type 1 to fairly flat with the Top 5 diver. But this one's also a little bit uncommon because it's on a full deployant clasp. You can see this is not something that Resonance generally does. They're generally on pin buckles. This is the full Resonance steel deployant. That's a nice addition to have if you were buying secondary
Quick question from
market.
my good friend Ted. Ted, don't they make a great dive watch? Also, Ted, they do make a great dive watch. It is the Type 5. It's an oil-filled watch, and it's going to be the biggest three of the various models. And they do it in titanium, like a gray titanium. They do it in a black steel. So I mean, my favorite two, I would say, are the Type 5 and the Type 1. Size-wise, for me, the Type 1 probably would fit the best. If I had a slightly bigger wrist, I would love to rock the Type 5.
The Type 5 is nice. It's got a system that actually locks the case back so you can't accidentally change the time because it is a diver. It has a rotating bezel. But because you can accidentally change the time with the case back of a Resonance, they also have to lock the dial. So it has a bezel that's unidirectional, and it also has a locking dial. The problem is it's just a big mound on your wrist, which is cool because it's very...
It's awesome. They have cool straps. Like,
it's commando.
I mean, it's more expensive than a Type 1. So, you know, I think that it ends up being a different price point. The Type 1 is, I think, low 20s, and then the Type 5 gets in somewhere to the mid 30s. So it's definitely a different price point, but it's also a very different look. But it's cool. There's no other dive watch like it. Like you can have that in your collection, and there's nothing else that will look like it.
There is one crazy thing that's a little bit like it. If you guys are familiar with the Zen UX, you know there is another oil-filled watch, but it looks nothing like the Resonance, and it's completely different principle. But there is another oil-filled watch, and they built one for Bell and Ross at one point. So that's the history of oil-filled dive watches.
Okay, so Tim will look at more questions from the chat. I brought this on because A, I'm a big Omega fan, but B,
it's badass.
It's badass. But I've had a lot of questions about ceramic watches lately, and and it always makes me sort of come back to this watch. And when I think black ceramic watches, or I think ceramic watches in general, the one that just does it for me is the Dark Side of the Moon. I just think it was so beautifully executed. It was avant-garde at the time. It was impossible to get. And even though that they've made a lot of iterations of the watch, this one still is the one that does it for me. And I just think that they knocked it out of the park with this watch. I mean, it was a $12,000 price point for an in-house chrono. You had that fabric cool strap that came with the watch. And just, the watch itself was just beautifully executed. And it came at a time when most other brands were doing much more expensive ceramic watches. And I just, whenever I think ceramic watches, this is the one that just comes to mind that I think is like a have to have.
A couple of cool things. Well, first of all, let me just say anecdotally, I've seen a lot of broken ceramic watches. I've probably seen the fewest of the moon ceramic case breaks of any breed or subspecies of ceramic watches. This, the gray side, the white side, I've hardly seen any of these fractured. I'm not saying it never happens, but for me, this is the single most remarkable thing about the watch. It's almost an everyday beater that's made of ceramic, and I never say that. A few things that really work: the tachymeter is ceramic, the case is ceramic, the dial is gloss polished ceramic. And this watch was really a style leader for Omega. Like Brian said, it has a wonderfully rich strap, a combination of textile and leather with a contrasting stitch, and you get a sensational 60-hour power reserve coaxial chronometer, column wheel, vertical clutch, exclusive chronograph caliber right here. Now, the only thing I will say is it is a little bit thick, and it has a sapphire that's as domed on the case back as it is over the dial itself. But look at the dial detail. I know there's a little spot on there that I didn't wipe off, but you get both the ceramic base and white gold hands and indices.
It is awesome with the pump pushers. Yeah. I mean, this watch is just so cool. And one of my...
And it's an easy 44 to wear.
Yeah, so, for me, it's hard to wear the watch just because 44 is big on me. A lot of the questions are, why don't they do this in 40 and why don't they do it in 38? And I feel like the short answer is it was perfectly executed the first time. And a lot of the buyers of this watch probably want something a little bit bigger. And to be honest, like seeing this watch in a 38 millimeter, I just think would be like sort of weird. But, it's the kind of watch where I just wish my wrist was bigger than it was in order to be able to pull it off a little bit better.
I think you could, to be honest. I can wear it.
It's pretty big.
It's very compact. It's 50 millimeters lug to lug, so it's not going to hang over. I'll say this. This is why they can't shrink that watch. Some concepts don't scale. There's a big pilot at IWC. The question may be, well, why don't they make a little pilot? Because when you take 46 and you make it 38, it doesn't look right. That's why there's a Mark 17, a Mark XYZ. The bottom line is that some things just don't scale down. And more to the point, perhaps this is the real limiting factor, that 9300 chronograph is so thick because it's a tri-level coaxial that's automatic, that's also a modular chronograph.
And these are 5-year warranties now.
They are now. But the point is that movement is so thick that you start shrinking things, you wind up with something that looks like a coffee can. So proportionally, you can't shrink that watch around the movement.
Yeah. And the only thing that I would say is I love the strap. I love that they have the sort of the rubber inlay on it in order to protect the holes from getting worn. I wish more straps that had that calf skin lining on the inside were lined in rubber. Like I just, because I'd want to wear this sporty and you'd want to wear it in the water. It just makes it a little bit hard on the strap. But anyways, guys, keep the questions coming in.
I'm trying to type as I co-host a show. We had a question, where are we located? Let's be clear, we are now global. We have an office in Neuchâtel, Switzerland. We have an office in Hong Kong. Our affiliate Topwatch Watchbox is in, I believe they're in Cape Town, South Africa? Topwatch?
I think so, yeah.
We are also in Philadelphia, and we are in Cleveland in the United States, and I think we are growing all the time. I think I'm not going to steal anyone's thunder. We have more locations and affiliates coming, but right now that's where we are. And all of our locations are set up for you to visit, especially Hong Kong, which is...
Just let us know in advance.
Exactly, yeah. Unless you come to a Govberg store, they're always ready for you.
Yes. So here is a, I was saving this one for last, but Tim made a couple additions on the table, which we're going to save for last. So here we have a reference 3700 two-tone. So I think I've brought 3700s before in the show. I'm not entirely sure, but here we have a 3700. This is the original iteration of the Nautilus, known as the Jumbo. 42 millimeter size, JLC caliber movement, produced in the late 70s to the, was it early 80s?
Believe it or not, they made them up into the 21st century.
Did they?
Rarely. I think most ever made were probably made in the 70s and 80s, but they continued to come off the line almost right up to the 30th anniversary.
Because it got discontinued when the 3800 came out.
I believe it was made right up to about 2004, 2005, I want to say even.
Was it?
I think so. I've seen them with ceramic pin snaps in the bracelet. We'll continue our forensics on that.
Because as they get sent in for service, I know that they update components.
Yeah, but that one didn't have a Sigma dial, and the Sigma dials went away in the late 90s.
Well, if anybody on the show wants to do a quick Google search, let us know when they stopped producing the 3700.
Yeah,
but anyways, here we have, you can tell that it's, the original Nautilus by the, one of the telltale signs is the Sigma dial on the, meaning that you've got the Sigma on either side of Swiss on the front of the dial. And you also have here one of the original buckles and the original clasps on the buckle in order to be able to tell, that this watch, what the reference is.
The other nice thing about this is the original case construction. People forget just how thin and fine the Nautilus was before the 5711, which is admirably thin at about 8.6 millimeters, but the original watch without a display caseback and a monoblock one-piece lower case was just as water resistant and far slimmer. This is about a 7.5 millimeter thick watch. Because of that original case construction, the display caseback on the 5711 added a lot of thickness and made it considerably thicker than the prior watch, just as the original monoblock Royal Oaks are a lot thinner than the modern Jumbo, and it's all down to the display caseback. But there was a patent filed by Gerald Genta in the name of the Stern family for the construction of this original case. So you have a one-piece lower case. What appears to be a removable caseback is not, and everything actually loads through the front. So the dial and the movement both load through the front, and then this interlinking case system, you can see how it actually flanks the case on both sides. That creates the hermetic seal that lets this ultra-thin watch achieve 120 meter water resistance. People forget that Gerald Genta did not just style this watch, he designed the case design from an engineering standpoint, and the patent was actually registered in the name of the Sterns.
And here's what's crazy. It looks like here, hold on, from 1976 to 1990, production was then stopped. The stainless steel time and date version was not replaced until the 5711A.
Pretty sure they left the factory until the 2000s.
No, it looks like here to 1990. It said here, so I don't know if this is a 1-1AJ or a 1AJ, but it looks like total two-tone of both versions of the watch, 900 pieces total. Yeah. So which is crazy when you think about, this is one of 900 in the world made. I mean, that is nuts.
I challenge this, which was compiled from a forum post on Time Zone.
But, so yeah.
It looks pretty legit.
I would say if Mondani is out there and he wants to comment on this, that could resolve the debate. Okay, jumping forward. And if you're in the chat box, please chime up, Guido Mondani. I would love to meet the publisher. Friends, we have one really cool and really complicated watch that is the anti-Nautilus on the table tonight. I can tell you exactly when this one was made. This was a 2015 model year IWC reference 3972-4. 45 millimeters. This is the Portugueser Perpetual Calendar Digital Date Month 75th Anniversary Limited Edition of 250 pieces. A red gold case. And I do mean red, not rose, not pink, with a sensational conventional sunburst blue dial. This has a fully coordinated perpetual calendar in a most unconventional fashion. Maybe you don't need all those secondary displays. Maybe less is more. You have the date, you have the month, and at 6 o'clock you have the leap year phase. You have a mono counter at 12 o'clock for hours and minutes, and constant seconds at 6 o'clock. All of that, and it's a 68-hour power reserve flyback chronograph, a mechanically programmed calendar based on the Kurt Claus module, so you can never create an imaginary combination of date, month, and leap year. All you do is adjust the date and everything moves in sync. Now the caseback is sensational because this is the 51 jewel 89801. 4-pawl Peloton winding system. This one is an absolute monster, and you can actually see the apparatus of the column wheel working away deep inside the movement. It gives you an incredible view of a movement that is deep and beautiful, and you'll even note it has a free-sprung balance adjusted in a chronometer like 5 positions. There's a lot of mechanism in this watch, and most IWCs will give you 1 out of 250, 1 out of 1,000. This series featured individual numbering, and by IWC standards, that is as scarce as hen's teeth on a rooster. It's just a gorgeous piece, too.
Everybody's calling for us to bring more Rolex on.
I have some Rolex for
we
you.
have a Rolex here. But I mean, again, honestly, like, a lot of the watches that I bring are just interesting stuff that comes in. If you're looking to see steel Submariners, like, I would say go to your review channel.
Yeah, exactly. I will be honest, I have reviewed probably more watches than anyone on the internet in history, and
I would say that's true. I think you're also the I think it's most minutes watched of anybody ever within the watch industry.
Okay, yeah, people have heard me jaw for hours on end. I think they use it as torture in North Korea. But right here you can see, I brought this one in. This is the Rolex Patriot. Okay, technically speaking...
Did you nickname it the Patriot?
I
think you
did
nicknamed
not.
it the Patriot.
I did not nickname it the Patriot.
Hold on. So if I type Rolex Patriot into Google, that's going to come up.
I'm going to nickname this the Rolex...
It does not come up.
I'm going to nickname this the Rolex Rock Candy. This is 135 gems. The lugs are paved. You can see the crown guards are paved. The baguette gems on the bezel are a combination of 23 diamonds, 18 rubies, and 18 real sapphires. None of this is spinel, and none of this is aftermarket. Rolex made this. It's a white gold GMT Master. This is the 116759 SARU. It launched as a special order piece at Basel World 2007, and this is the first example I've seen. Now, it's a GMT Master in every mechanical respect. It's still water resistant to 100 meters, and no two of these are exactly alike because the hand setting of gems. This is probably the only entirely handcrafted métier d'art that is still practiced at Rolex. So when you get one of these, you're getting a handmade Rolex, and these things do retail for what I consider a fairly reasonable price given all the gems. $88,400 is a lot of money, but I would expect the hardware alone in white gold to be about a $38,000 watch?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think all things considered, especially pre-owned, this is a crazy piece. This is a sometimes watch, not an all-the-time watch.
Now, these are actually easier for them to produce, I would say, than the rainbow pieces. The rainbow pieces, believe it or not, one of the reasons why they had such small productions and that they stopped producing the watch was the ability to have the perfectly matched sapphires that would go all the way around. So, because they had a strict adherence to the quality of the sapphires and to the colors matching and to the congruency of them. And if there was any holdup in that supply, they wouldn't produce the watches.
Cut, clarity, color, carats, the 4 C's. You're GIA certified, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's exactly what these watches are all about. They are not optically scanned and then mechanically assembled. They are hand graded and then matched for assembly in a single unit. And that's why from watch to watch there might be some variance, but within a single piece there will be none.
Yeah. And, again, I was never, I was never big into gem set watches, and I would say over time, like I've definitely, I think, changed my tune as I've seen more gem set watches, particularly from Patek and Rolex, where sometimes when they do it in an understated way or just an interesting way, that it doesn't come across as blingy. And I always talk about the Patek 5170, and for those that don't know reference numbers, that's the chronograph in platinum with the baguette markers. And it is diamonds, and I think it's one of those things where if you're looking at it on a piece of paper, you don't quite understand how elegant and beautiful it looks, but it has that extra pop, and that's why you're seeing more diamond markers from them.
Diamond indices are a different kind of thing. Diamonds on the bezel and lugs, especially. Let me show you the crown guards of this watch real quick, because I don't think you got the full advantage when it was on my wrist. Folks were saying that this watch is a little bit too flamboyant in the chat box, and I would say, yeah, that's probably the case for most. Although, as gems on a men's watch go, this is probably as close as you'll ever come to pulling it off. I actually think that's 100% better than most, and easily the most attractive gem set case and bezel that Rolex makes.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome.
Look, they kept the green GMT Master script on the dial, and they did an entirely uncolored 24-hour GMT hand too. A special piece. Not for everyone and not for all the time, but a special piece. This to me is
like the kind of watch that like you want to see somebody wear and the thing is just destroyed. Like you just know that like they wear it every day and it's just like, you know, they live in it. And like you look at it and you're just thinking like, oh my God, like who is this person that just literally lives in a white gold, you know, gem set Submariner with diamond lugs.
One almost saying Tim is the type of guy to buy a first Tinder date a Rolex. I don't know. Maybe if the dial says Rolodex, I don't know. I think it'd probably cheap out and buy like a Rector Street special. But I will say. Alan Tudor does have a good point that the green GMT on the dial doesn't really match the watch, and I would agree with that. As much as I love the color green, it's a little bit misplaced.
Interesting. I actually that is an interesting observation. Like it very well could have been a different color.
I think
it would have been a cool accent to the piece as well to sort of differentiate it one notch further.
The one thing they did differently is they did not color the GMT hand, which is a good choice.
Yeah.
So it's like they made one good choice and one questionable choice. I'm not saying it's wrong, it just seems weird. But that watch came out in 2007 when Rolex was doing green GMT everything, so who's to say? Tell us, if you're watching this recorded, in the boxes below, do you like, do you hate? Let us know. Controversy is good, especially when a gem set Rolex is concerned. Keep it clean, but let us know what you think.
Exactly. And guys, please, I always ask, you know, each show, but it really does help. If any of you guys have any questions or anything that you want brought up on the show, please email me. I'm going to put my email in here. Maybe the studio will one day put my email up on the TV. We shall see. But I'm going to put my email here in the chat. So if there's anything that you want to know or see, just email me and I'm happy to bring it up next show.
By the way, just to restore my credentials as a conventional watch guy, let me just show this in because I think people are questioning after that Rolex. There we go. This is what I actually wear on a daily basis. I bang it into door frames and car seat belt buckles. And to its credit, Tegament works. Not a scratch on this damn thing. This is the easiest watch I've ever worn. I don't worry about it 1 minute of a day and it always takes care of me. I mean, I love Zinn timepieces, but the day Zinn does a diamond and sapphire set piece like that, that'll be the day hell freezes over.
Quick question from the Watch Lounge. What are your thoughts on the Hodinkee swatch? I honestly liked it. Like, I think that anything... I'm a big fan of the System 51. I think that anything that gets a mechanical watch on somebody's wrist is a really cool thing. And, you know, that Swatch watch, I would say, is... You know, it's definitely targeting, you know, a certain percentage of the watch buying community. I don't know if it's targeting the person that buys a Patek 3700. One of the nice things about that particular watch, though, and coming from them, is that it does sort of bridge the two. Yeah. And, you know, as I said, I think that the watch was pretty cool. The price point makes sense. And, you know, for getting a mechanical watch on somebody's wrist that may have had an Apple Watch before, I think it's a really neat thing. They just came out with... the Mickey Mouse watch by the artist. Who was it? Who did it? Was it Damien Hirst?
I got to admit, I missed out on the Swatch Mickey watch. I will say that my favorite Swatch, personally, is that System Frog that I own. The green System 51. I'm in love with that piece.
Yeah, so it was a Swatch with the Spot Mickey on it from Damien Hirst. I think it was Damien Hirst. Yes, it was. And I think it's very cool. Like, the price point was super reasonable. It's a cool, neat watch. It fits into a collection. It's funny, like, I saw the watch advertised online, and it was like, it's going to be available in 2 days, and, you know, and you'd have to wait up late and get the watch. And I told myself, like, I'm going to wait up late. I'm going to get this watch. I really wanted it. With all things, like,
you wanted it, or you like Air Jordan wanted it?
No, I wanted it. Like, I wanted it. They had a limited one with a black case that I really wanted. I thought it was very cool. and you know, I was going to wait up late, like all the sneaker people do that wait up to then get told that they're not getting the sneakers. But I figured I had a chance since it was a Swatch watch, and I just completely forgot about it. And then now I go online and everybody's asking like over retail for it, and it's this whole thing. So, but next time.
The only Swatch you need, guys, Bunny Sutra. Look it up. That's real.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think that is all that we have for tonight. Again, my name is Brian.
I'm Tim.
And thank you guys for logging on. 284 live viewers, by the way. I think that's the most we've ever had.
That is,
so guys, thank you for
watching.
That's the record. And again, come back next week.